The first slap landed, making my ears ring as the metallic scent of blood immediately rushed to my nose. Before I could even stumble to regain my balance, the second and third slaps from Liam, the man I called my husband, came down mercilessly, sending me crashing against the edge of the dining table. A large tureen of scalding lobster bisque shattered onto the floor, splashing hot, greasy liquid all over the new silk blouse I had worn for Christmas Day dinner. The physical pain at that moment didn't numb me as much as the sound that followed. No one intervened. No one helped me up. Instead, my mother-in-law, Eleanor Vance, kept her legs casually crossed on her expensive mahogany dining chair, calmly slicing a piece of prime rib, the corner of her lips twitching into a chilling smirk. My sister-in-law, Olivia, covered her mouth, giggling with a satisfied look in her eyes as if watching a comedy sketch. Standing above me, Liam pointed a finger directly at my face, the veins in his neck bulging red from expensive wine and the arrogance ingrained in his blood. Scream. Cry louder. You think anyone in this house is scared of you? Your entire family's net worth combined doesn't equal a fraction of my assets. Call the cops. We have money. I'll throw cash at their faces and see who dares to touch a single hair on my head. The mocking laughter of my in-laws blended together, creating a thick, suffocating noise that choked my throat. They looked at me like a beaten stray dog, waiting for me to drop to my knees, beg, and plead for forgiveness the way the weak always do when faced with the power of money. But they were wrong. They were dead wrong. Lying on the hardwood floor, I wiped the blood trickling from the corner of my mouth. Strangely, I didn't cry. In that moment of being trampled to the absolute depths of my dignity, my brain became as clear and cold as ice. I shifted my eyes, pretending to reach for my phone that had skidded under the chair. With trembling but decisive fingers, I pressed speed dial number 1. The other end rang exactly once before picking up. I didn't scream. I didn't sob hysterically. I enunciated every single word clearly enough for the sound to pierce the thick, alcohol-scented air of the dining room. Ben, save me. They're beating me. They said they have money and the law can't touch them. On the other end of the line, my older brother, Benjamin Hayes, a chief judge of the federal district court, remained silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then, a deep, razor-sharp voice echoed, "Lock the bedroom door. Preserve the scene. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I hung up and staggered to my feet. At that moment, my in-laws still hadn't realized that this brief 10-second call was the death knell for the rotten, pseudo-aristocratic empire they were so proud of. They didn't know who I had just called. For the 4 years I had been their daughter-in-law, I had completely hidden my brother's identity because of a single piece of advice he gave me. Live a normal life. Don't let people look at my seat on the bench and breed greed in their hearts. I had listened to him, enduring and keeping a low profile. But to wealthy, uneducated sociopaths, the patience of a kind person is viewed as cowardice. And when people despise you enough to slap you across the face during Christmas dinner, silence is no longer keeping the peace. It is complicity with evil. Leaning against the wall, I looked at the gloating faces before me. My mind automatically rewound a very long memory, like a slow-motion film. I asked myself where I went wrong. How did a highly educated woman with a great career turn herself into a doormat for this family? It turned out, everything started with very small traps. Traps so subtle that, if you weren't fully awake, you would mistake them for love and protection. My name is Mia. I was born in upstate New York, to a family of retired public school teachers. My parents weren't filthy rich, but they had more than enough to raise my brother and me with excellent educations. My brother, Ben, was the pride of our family, brilliant, decisive, and rising rapidly through the judicial ranks. I chose a quieter life, working as a senior CPA and financial director for a media firm in Manhattan. I always believed a woman just needed a stable career and a decent husband. Then I met Liam Vance. Liam was the sole heir to a prominent real estate development and construction family on Long Island's Gold Coast. When we first dated, Liam spoiled me rotten. He didn't seem like a trust fund baby who only knew how to spend his parents' money. He appeared ambitious, spoke eloquently, and always cared about my feelings. When I hesitated about our wealth disparity, Liam hugged me and whispered, "I don't care how much money your family has. I just need a wife who is understanding and supportive. Let me take care of the finances." How sweet that sounded. Few women can escape the delusion that they are the exception to a wealthy man. But I didn't know that the word understanding in the Vance family's dictionary didn't mean being polite and supportive. It meant bowing your head, staying silent when insulted, and opening your own wallet to serve your in-laws' egos. The day I was introduced to his family, Eleanor sat with her legs crossed on an imported Italian leather sofa. Her eyes scanned me like a barcode reader, pricing an asset. She didn't ask if my job was stressful, she just asked, "Your parents were public school teachers, right? Their pensions must barely be enough to scrape by. Our family is used to business. The cash flow we see in a day takes regular people decades to earn. Marrying into this family means you've hit the jackpot." My face burned. My pride flared up, but Liam squeezed my hand under the table, signaling me to let it go. I swallowed my anger, telling myself that business people were just blunt and I shouldn't be petty. I lied to myself with the excuse that she was just straightforward. The wedding was extravagant. Eleanor intentionally threw the biggest event in their country club to show off to the Hamptons elite. But behind the glamorous spotlight was a harsh reality I tasted on my wedding night. Eleanor had her staff collect all the monetary wedding gifts from both sides, including cash and checks from my friends and family. When I gently asked Liam about the gifts from my friends so I could write thank you notes and keep track for the future, he snapped. "Mom said she's keeping it in a trust for us to use as capital. Why are you calculating over petty cash? Are we short on money? Are you afraid my mother is going to steal your pennies?" It was over $30,000 in cash gifts from my personal network. In his mouth, it became pennies. My right to control my own assets was blatantly stripped away. From day one, under the guise of the family taking care of it, I failed to realize that when people use money to dominate you at the first step, and you yield, they will view you as someone with no boundaries. Months passed. I kept working, earning my CFO salary of nearly $15,000 a month. To many, that's a dream number. But in the Vance household, it was just grocery and dog food money. Eleanor had a strange habit. She never explicitly demanded I pay for household expenses, but she knew exactly how to psychologically pressure me into volunteering my credit card. Every dinner, she would sigh, "This house is a money pit." The electric bill spiked again, and the organic imported food for the poodle costs over $1,000 this month. Men go out to make the big bucks, women should handle the trivial household logistics so things run smoothly. So, I automatically paid the utilities, the water bill, the groceries, and the random furnishings. I bought imported fruits. I bought expensive supplements for my mother-in-law. I thought simply, I live here, so contributing is natural. My husband handles the massive real estate deals. I handle the home front. But human greed is bottomless. When Eleanor saw I was willing to pay without complaining, she began treating my income as a communal family fund. The trivial logistics ballooned. One day she'd say, "My friend is selling this Hermes Birkin bag for a steal, only $20,000. Swipe your card for me, dear. I'll have Liam reimburse you next week." Another day, Olivia would visit, see my new diamond necklace, casually take it off my neck, put it on hers, and say, "I'm borrowing this for a gala tonight. Looks great. The perks of marrying rich, huh?" Naturally, the necklace never returned. Every time I reminded Liam about the money his mother owed or the jewelry his sister took, he looked annoyed. "You act like we're scamming you. You're part of this family now, be generous. Your money is the family's money, why are you so calculating? Once my next development gets funded, I'll pay you back 10 times over." That phrase was a dull knife, sawing at my awareness over and over. In their eyes, Mia wasn't a partner or a family member. I was an emergency blood bank. When they needed cash, they drained me. When they needed to show off, they paraded me as the high-earning, obedient daughter-in-law. There were times I felt trapped. I wanted to confide in Ben, but every time I picked up the phone, I hesitated. My brother worked in the federal courts. His job was intensely stressful, his moral code incredibly strict. He had always told me that family issues should remain internal, but if they ever crossed legal or moral boundaries, I should come to him. I was afraid of worrying him and breaking my parents' hearts. I forced myself to wear a mask of happiness. Every time I visited my hometown, I brainwashed myself into thinking all wealthy families had strict rules, and enduring it was the price of peace. But I forgot one thing. Patience is only valuable when given to reasonable people. To the arrogant, your patience is a license for them to trample you. And they shredded that license on Christmas Day when Liam's slap struck my face. Standing against the cold wall of the dining room, looking at the twisted, mocking faces of my mother-in-law and my deadbeat husband, I knew my time playing the good daughter-in-law was over. The grandfather clock chimed 8:00 p.m. In exactly 15 minutes, Benjamin Hayes would arrive. And this family that boasted we have money, the law can't touch us, would experience being crushed by the very law they despised. I stood up straight, smoothing down the stained silk of my blouse. I looked at Liam. My eyes held no warmth, only the chilling emptiness of looking at a dead wall. "You're right," I smiled, a smile that made Olivia's giggles catch in her throat. "Your family has money, but whether your money can buy a federal indictment, we'll find out shortly." During the 15 minutes waiting for Ben, I stood quietly in the corner, letting the cold, greasy bisque drip off my blouse onto the floor. The air in the massive mansion was thick and suffocating. Liam had returned to the table, poured himself another glass of Cabernet, and downed it like a conqueror celebrating his dominance. Olivia turned up her nose, which had seen 3 rhinoplasties, and used a wet wipe to clean her red-painted nails, muttering curses about ungrateful, insolent women. Eleanor leisurely took another bite of her steak, as if her son slapping her daughter-in-law was just light dinner entertainment. Looking at them, a wave of profound nausea rose from the pit of my stomach. I used to think they were just wealthy people with a superiority complex. No. They were blood-sucking leeches hiding in designer clothes. Their wealthy empire had rotted from the inside out long ago. And I, a high-earning CFO with a flawless credit score, was the life raft they had planned to exploit from the moment I stepped into their home. My mind flashed back to the middle of last year, when the curtain on the Vance family's bottomless greed officially rose. It was an autumn evening. Liam came home looking exhausted, his tie loose, reeking of alcohol. He collapsed onto the sofa, pulling his hair, playing the role of a tormented man to perfection. Eleanor immediately ran downstairs, patted his shoulder, and sighed heavily, making sure I could hear. "Is the new subdivision project stalling due to capital? My poor boy, carrying the weight of the Vance empire is so exhausting." She turned to me, her eyes brimming with fake sympathy. "Mia, your husband is in trouble. The banks have tightened commercial lending. Our company has plenty of assets, but they're all leveraged. He needs immediate liquidity to bridge a 3-month gap. If he can't get past this, everything will go down the drain." At that time, I was still the good wife. Hearing the family was in trouble, I naturally worried. I asked Liam, "How much do you need?" "I have about $200,000 in my personal savings. If it's an emergency, I can transfer it." For someone working a corporate job, that was the sweat and tears of my youth, countless sleepless nights running financial reports, and frugality not even buying a single designer bag. But at my offer, Liam and Eleanor's eyes flashed with a strange light. It wasn't gratitude. It was the hunger of predators smelling blood. Liam grabbed my hands, his voice warm and coaxing. "I'll gladly take the $200,000, but it's not enough to plug the hole. I need an additional $500,000. I gasped and pulled my hands back. $500,000? Where are you going to get that right now? Eleanor slid closer, tightly clasping my hands together. Her usually shrill voice became sickly sweet and pleading. Mia, honey, I know as a CFO you have great relationships with commercial bank managers, and your credit history is pristine. You just need to co-sign an unsecured business line of credit for the family company or use the deed to your parents' house upstate as collateral. Just for 3 months. I promise on my honor. In 3 months, the cash flow will return, we'll pay it off entirely, and give you interest higher than the bank. Your family, this is just a formality. Help your husband in his time of need. Someday, all this wealth will belong to the two of you anyway. Belong to the two of you anyway. That phrase is the ultimate spell manipulative mothers-in-law use on their daughters-in-law. Her logic was so flawless that if I refused, I would instantly become selfish, unsupportive, and cold-blooded. I looked at Liam. His eyes were welling with tears, his cowardly nature perfectly disguised as a CEO battling economic headwinds. I hesitated. As a finance professional, I knew the massive risks of co-signing loans for someone else. But under the pressure of the entire family, the sweet talking, and the moral obligation of marital unity, my defenses crumbled. I convinced myself that with a mansion this size and a husband driving a G-Wagon, how could they default on a few $100,000? So, I nodded. I drained my $200,000 life savings into Eleanor's account. I didn't stop there. I used my personal reputation to co-sign a $300,000 unsecured line of credit from a partner bank. I remember the day I signed the promissory note. The cold paper, the blue ink spelling out Mia Hayes Vance. The moment the signature was complete, I saw Eleanor exhale, the corners of her mouth curling into an intensely satisfied smirk. And then, the truth about this working capital was stripped bare in the most brutal way. My money was never poured into any subdivision project. 2 weeks after receiving the $500,000, Liam casually upgraded to a brand new Mercedes. Olivia posted pictures on Instagram of a lavish 2-week European vacation flaunting limited edition Chanel bags. As for Eleanor, she upgraded her entire diamond jewelry collection for her country club galas. When I asked Liam about the project disbursements, he brushed me off, irritated. You're an accountant, not a developer. Don't try to understand macroeconomics. Money has to be spent on maintaining our image and entertaining partners to keep the projects moving. Why do you nag like a fishwife? It's just a little bit of money, stop acting like it's a big deal. A little bit of money. That was my life, my future. But in their eyes, it was just free cash they had scammed out of a gullible daughter-in-law. 3 months passed. Not a single cent of the principal was returned, and the bank started auto-deducting the monthly interest directly from my payroll account. Panicked, I confronted my mother-in-law. She was filing her nails, not even looking at me, and coldly dropped, "The company is tight on cash this month. Handle the interest yourself. You make $15,000 a month. A little interest is nothing." A daughter-in-law in this house isn't allowed to nickel and dime her mother-in-law. It was then the horrific realization hit me. I had walked into a trap. A perfect trap woven with family ties, aristocratic ego, and bottomless greed. They weren't doing any macroeconomic business. Their company was an empty shell. Drowning in toxic debt, desperately maintaining a facade of wealth by bleeding every penny from anyone they could exploit. They saw me as a cash cow to be milked dry. When I produced milk, they spoke sweet words. When I started asking questions and demanding my rights, they flipped the script and treated me like trash. Resentment sparked in my chest. But I chose to remain silent, not out of fear, but out of knowledge. Against corporate thugs in tailored suits like them, throwing a tantrum would leave me with nothing. I needed evidence. I needed to collect everything to cast a net that would capture these brazen monsters all at once. My silence today, standing here watching them laugh at my pain, was the result of months of swallowing blood. I endured until I was exhausted. Until the nightmare of December arrived, pushing me to a point of no return. The real nightmare isn't realizing you've been scammed, it's realizing the scammers are forcing you to kneel and serve them every single day. December, the month leading up to Christmas, stretched my limits until they snapped. The workload of a CFO at year-end is suffocating. I had to close the books, reconcile debts, prepare financial statements, and finalize tax audits. Some nights I left the office to empty, freezing Manhattan streets. I was exhausted, my mind strung tight as a wire. But when I stepped through the massive iron gates of the Vance estate, I wasn't allowed to be a tired wife. I had to instantly transform into an unpaid maid and an ATM. Eleanor didn't care that I worked from 8:00 a.m. to 10:00 p.m. On December 1st, she tossed a long, densely written notepad on the coffee table. Her voice was flat, dripping with command. Here is the Christmas shopping list. The wine must be imported, Italian Barolo, whole cases, to gift Liam's 5 biggest partners. We need 10 boxes of wild-foraged Oregon truffles for the extended family. Wagyu beef, premium seafood, 50 stems of white orchids for the foyer, plus the holiday bonuses for the staff and catering. You are the daughter-in-law, and you got a massive year-end bonus. You will handle all of this perfectly. Don't let people look at the Vance family and think we are going under. I picked up the list, looking at the numbers dancing in my head. The total cost was easily approaching $15,000. I looked at her, fighting back a sigh. Eleanor, this month I have to pay the principal and interest on the $300K line of credit I co-signed for Liam. The bank has already garnished a large portion of my salary and bonus. I can't cover all of this. Can Liam split it with me? The moment I finished speaking, Eleanor slammed her teacup onto the table. Hot tea spilled over the glass top, shattering the silence. She glared at me, pointing her 2-carat diamond ring right in my face. What did you just say? Are you competing with your husband? Liam is carrying this entire empire. His capital is tied up in construction sites. Where is he supposed to get liquid cash for trivial women's kitchen matters? What is your salary even for, if you dare complain about buying Christmas supplies for your in-laws? Do you know Olivia gifts her in-laws $100,000 every holiday? Since you married into this house, I haven't asked you for anything major. Now I ask you to handle Christmas, and you threaten me with your debts? She screamed, her shrill voice echoing through the room. Liam, who was playing a game on his phone, looked up, frowning at me with reproach. What is wrong with you? It's just a few $1,000 for our family's Christmas, and you're being cheap? Are you trying to embarrass me? Just put it on your Amex. When the cash flow returns after the holidays, I'll pay it off. When the cash flow returns after the holidays. The same empty promise I'd been choking on for half a year. I looked at the cowardly man slouched on the sofa, then at the greedy woman standing with her hands behind her back, glaring at me. They didn't see me as human. I was a designated debtor, meant to be drained of my last drop of blood to sustain their delusional vanity. I didn't say another word. Arguing would only give them an excuse to call me disrespectful and abuse me further. I silently took the list and walked upstairs to our room. But that silence was not submission. That was the moment I realized I could no longer be the sheep they sheared. That night, while Liam snored beside me, reeking of beer from a holiday party with his frat brothers, I quietly got out of bed. I took my personal laptop to my desk. Using my expertise as a CFO, I began tracing the financial footprints of the Vance family's business. For the past 6 months, blinded by trust and overwork, I had never deeply audited their books, even though I had back-end access from helping them with loan applications. The night was dead silent, save for the soft clicking of my mouse. But every click revealed truths that sent ice down my spine. There were no subdivision projects under construction. There was no tied-up cash flow. It was all phantom contracts and fake invoices fabricated to roll over old debts. Liam's company was essentially insolvent over a year ago. They were drowning in toxic debt from 2 major banks and a mountain of shadow equity loans. And the most horrifying thing, the thing that made my hands shake so violently I nearly dropped my water glass, was a hidden folder named Collateral Files. I clicked it. The screen displayed a scanned loan guarantee agreement. The borrower was Liam's company, and the guarantor was Mia Hayes. But this wasn't the $300,000 line of credit I knew about. This was a brand new loan for $1 million from a shadowy private equity firm functioning as high-interest loan sharks. On that paper was my signature, my thumbprint, and a notarized copy of my driver's license. But I swore to God I had never signed that document. I zoomed in on the signature. The handwriting was incredibly similar, but the loop at the end of Mia was shaky and lacked pressure, completely out of character for my quick signature. The thumbprint was partially smudged. My mind spun, putting the pieces together. I remembered an evening 3 months ago when I was bedridden with a high fever. Liam brought me a glass of orange juice and told me to take my medicine. After that, I fell into a deep, heavy sleep, dead to the world. Was it possible? Yes. They had drugged me with sleeping pills while I was feverish and used my thumbprint to stamp these forged documents via a biometric notary app. They weren't just stealing my money, they were planning to use me as their ultimate scapegoat. If the loan sharks called the debt, the first person to get their legs broken by thugs, the first person dragged to federal court for the guarantee, would be me. They would wash their hands clean, blaming everything on the CFO daughter-in-law who took unauthorized loans. I clutched my chest, a violent wave of nausea hitting me. I couldn't even cry because the terror and disgust had frozen all my emotions. I was living in a house of demons. Demons in designer clothes, wearing expensive cologne, preaching about family values every day. I couldn't scream now. If I alerted them, I would end up in a shallow grave. I bit my lip until it bled. With freezing hands, I meticulously copied all the forged documents and the illicit wire transfers onto 3 separate encrypted flash drives. I hid one in the lining of my purse, one inside my makeup compact, and encrypted the third to a secure cloud server. The next morning, I woke up early, gave a bland smile, and went to work. I used my credit card to buy everything on Eleanor's Christmas list. I bought every single item, but I kept all the itemized receipts. I let them gloat over spending my hard-earned money. Because I knew that when the enemy is drunk on a false victory, they leave themselves the most vulnerable. Throughout December, I played the role of the enduring, obedient wife. I didn't talk back when Olivia complained the truffles weren't big enough, or react when Eleanor threw shade. I kept a stone face, coldly gathering every piece of evidence, every audio recording of them begging off their loan sharks on the phone. I waited. A cornered beast never bites randomly, it waits for the exact moment the hunter drops his guard to rip out his throat. And I chose Christmas Day, the day they cared about their image the most. I was going to strip off their fake skin in front of everyone. Then, the worst day arrived. On Christmas afternoon, the holiday spirit was joyous outside. Cars drove by, families visiting each other. But inside the dining room of the Vance estate, the air reeked of the sour smell of money, nouveau riche pretension, and utter contempt. It was just Liam, Eleanor, me, and Olivia. I had prepared the lavish dinner entirely by myself since dawn. A massive spread, a perfectly roasted prime rib, lobster bisque, caviar, and beautifully arranged sides sitting on the solid oak table. The smell of food should bring warmth and reunion. But when these people sat down, it was just suffocating. Eleanor sat at the head of the table. She took a bite of a side dish, spat it onto her plate, and scowled. "Mia, I told you to buy the wild-foraged Oregon truffles. These taste like bland dirt, it's just one Christmas dinner and you can't even get this right. Are you that cheap that you bought discount ingredients?" I stood there serving the food, pausing for a beat, but kept my voice steady. "Eleanor, I had a supplier fly those truffles indirectly. They weren't cheap, but perhaps the flavor profile just isn't to your liking." Flavor profile? Olivia pouted, poking at her food as if digging through trash. "At my house, we only eat imported Italian Alba truffles. These forest mushrooms are for country bumpkins. Oh, speaking of which, it's Christmas Day, and your parents haven't even come to pay their respects to our family? Did they fake our—" Olivia's words were a razor blade slicing straight through my eardrums. I slammed the serving spoon down next to the tureen. The sharp clack made the whole table flinch. I looked up, staring directly into Olivia's face. My parents are retired public servants. Their pension isn't massive, but they have never begged anyone for a dime, nor have they ever defaulted on a single cent. They have severe rheumatoid arthritis and couldn't travel in the cold, so they called to wish Eleanor a Merry Christmas this morning. Olivia, kindly watch your mouth when you speak about my parents. Oh, look at you, daring to talk back to your sister-in-law? Olivia's eyes widened as she slammed her hand on the table. Eleanor immediately jumped in, her voice shrill like scraping metal. Is she wrong? How dare you raise your voice, you country trash. Your parents were low-level state employees, poor as church mice. They wouldn't know what a Wagyu steak looks like if it hit them in the face. We brought you into this family, let you live in luxury, in a mansion, driving nice cars. I thought you'd be grateful and serve us. Instead, you show your uneducated, calculating true colors. Not showing their faces to gift us properly, just making a cheap phone call. My blood boiled. The anger suppressed for months, combined with the absolute fury of hearing my parents insulted for no reason, completely shattered the shell of patience I was holding on to. You think my parents are poor as church mice? I stood up straight, placing both hands on the table, my eyes piercing through Eleanor. Yes, my family doesn't own a mega mansion, we don't drive luxury cars. But my parents never had to stage a theatrical play to scam their daughter-in-law out of her money. You say I live in luxury here? Tell me, this dinner today, the Italian Barolo Olivia is drinking, the orchids in the foyer who paid for it? Who swiped her Amex for $15,000 to maintain the facade of this house? I didn't scream. My voice was low and deliberate, but its weight slammed down onto the dining table like a sledgehammer. Eleanor's face turned from red to stark white. She never expected me to bring up money point blank in front of Olivia. Liam, who had been staring at his plate, looked up. His fragile, cowardly male ego was punctured. He slammed his fork down, pointed at me, and shouted, "Shut your mouth. How dare you speak to my mother like that? Over a few miserable bucks, you're whining at Christmas dinner? You think because you earn a little corporate salary you can lecture this family? A few miserable bucks." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. Right, my money is just miserable bucks. Then why did a genius CEO like you, from such a wealthy aristocratic family, have to force me to co-sign a $300,000 credit line? Why didn't you use your own money to pay the interest instead of letting the bank garnish my wages? And even more sickening, I leaned toward Liam, staring deep into the panic beginning to surface in his eyes. My voice cutting like a knife. Why did you dare drug me, steal my thumbprint, and forge my signature to guarantee a $1 million loan from shadow loan sharks? My final sentence detonated like a bomb in the middle of the dining room. Dead silence fell over the room. Eleanor seemed to stop breathing. Olivia's mouth hung open, the meat unswallowed. Liam turned pale, his pupils shrinking. He realized the earth-shattering secret he and his mother had hidden, the plot to make me their legal scapegoat, had been stripped bare. The fear of being exposed rapidly mutated into the extreme rage of a cornered animal. His pathetic, patriarchal ego couldn't accept being dragged through the mud by a woman he despised. Liam leaped up, his heavy chair crashing backward onto the tile floor. His eyes were bloodshot from the wine and blind fury. You went through my files? You've been spying on me, he hissed, jaw clenched. He didn't even deny it. His reaction was the clearest confession. I stood still, chin slightly raised, not backing down an inch. I wasn't spying on you. I was protecting my life from a pack of frauds. Give me my money back and remove my name from that filthy guarantee immediately, or I'm taking everything to the FBI. The FBI? Are you threatening me, you bitch? Liam roared like a rabid animal. Suddenly, he swung his arm. A devastating blow slammed into my face. Smack! The slap was so hard my head snapped to the side. Stars exploded in my vision. Without stopping, he grabbed my collar, yanked me forward, and delivered a second, then a third slap. He shoved me violently to the floor. My body hit the table's edge, dragging the tureen of scalding lobster bisque down with me. Hot, greasy soup and shattered porcelain tore into my skin. The metallic taste of blood from my split lip mixed with the smell of the food, creating a nauseating stench. And then came the laughter. The smirk from my mother-in-law, the giggles from my sister-in-law, and the arrogant challenge from the worst man on earth. Scream! Cry louder! We have money. Let's see who dares to touch us. They thought I would cry. They thought those slaps would break my will and force my submission. But they didn't know that as I fell, my hand grazed my phone, and in the split-second blood dripped from my mouth. I hit speed dial for the only man who could crush their filthy empire of money. The game of patience was over. Now began the bloodiest legal hunt they would ever face. If they dared to touch Mia, if they dared to use money to bend justice, they would pay a price heavier than their own lives. My phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the cold hardwood floor. The 10-second call was over, but its echo didn't seem to reach the ears of the monsters standing before me. They were too smug. The arrogance of people accustomed to using wealth to mask their moral bankruptcy had blinded them. Liam stood there, one foot stepping on a broken serving spoon, looking imperious like a tyrant who had just punished a rebel. He glared at me, nostrils flaring, his breath reeking of expensive wine and barely contained animalistic rage. "Who did you just call, huh? Did you call your mommy and daddy upstate to come save you?" Liam growled, stepping closer as if to kick me, but he stopped and let out a shrill laugh. "Call them. Rent a bus for your whole pathetic family to come watch me discipline my wife. Let's see if those retired teachers dare to utter a single squeak when they step into this mansion. Or will they drop to their knees and beg me not to throw their daughter out on the street?" From the dining table, Eleanor leisurely took a wet wipe and dabbed her mouth. She had absolutely no intention of stopping her son. On the contrary, her eyes looked at me with bottomless contempt. "Stop it, Liam. Don't dirty your hands on her. It's Christmas. Don't let her bleed all over the floors and ruin our holiday luck." She spoke as lightly as if advising him not to kick a stray dog. Then she tossed the wet wipe at me. It hit my face and landed in the puddle of bisque. "Wipe your face and clean up the battlefield you just made. This house has rules. If a daughter-in-law is out of line, a slap is normal. When I was a young wife, my mother-in-law made me kneel in the snow. You take a few slaps and throw a tantrum, threatening to call someone? You think you're that valuable?" Olivia chimed in, twirling her diamond ring, giggling. "Exactly. White trash trying to climb the ladder. You got my brother, live in a mansion, drive a luxury car, spend our money, and you don't know your place. You deserve to get hit. What are you crying about? Wipe your face and go brew some tea. The noise is giving me a headache." I knelt on the floor, one hand pressing against the freezing tile to keep my balance. Blood kept trickling from my lip, the salty, metallic taste filling my mouth. Every muscle in my face throbbed, but that pain was nothing compared to the disgust churning in my chest. I looked at them, studying every single face. I wasn't crying. Not a single tear fell, because tears are meant for the frustration that comes when you still hope for compassion. But at this moment, inside me, there was only a deadly, chilling cold. I had seen through to the absolute core of this family. They didn't view me as human. I was a financial instrument, a human shield. And when I outlived my usefulness or dared to rebel, they were ready to trample me into the dirt. "Why don't you keep hitting me?" I suddenly spoke. My voice was hoarse, but it didn't shake. Liam froze. Eleanor and Olivia went dead silent. Perhaps they expected me to sob, beg, or run to my room crying like previous times. But no, I slowly stood up straight. The pearl necklace around my neck had snapped during the struggle, and the pearls scattered across the floor with dry, hollow clicks. I pushed back my disheveled hair and wiped the blood from my mouth with the back of my hand, leaving a red streak across my cheek. My eyes locked onto Liam's sharp and soulless as a frozen lake. "Hit me. You said your family has money. You said money can be thrown in the cops' faces and cover up any crime. So beat me to death. Beat me until I can't open my mouth to report that $1 million shadow loan you forged my signature for." I took a step forward, directly confronting Liam, ignoring my battered appearance. "But I'm telling you this, Liam. As long as I am breathing, I will drag every single one of you into the light. Your shell company drowning in toxic debt, your fake invoices, this crumbling aristocratic facade, I will tear it all down. You little bitch. You're insane." Eleanor panicked, jumping to her feet, her chair crashing backward. Her arrogant confidence vanished, replaced by the frantic panic of a criminal caught red-handed. "What nonsense are you spewing? Who forged your signature? You volunteered to guarantee the company loan, and now you want to back out? You volunteered." I smirked, a smile that sent shivers down all three of their spines. We'll see if a forensic analyst at the trial agrees that a smudged thumbprint and a shaky signature look like volunteering. Did you think I was a senior CPA for 10 years just to be a puppet you could lead by the nose? Liam exhaled heavily. His face turned from red to ghastly pale. The terror of being exposed finally broke his fake bravado. But instead of admitting fault, his cowardice made him snap again. He grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the table, raising it to smash over my head. At that exact moment, my phone rang loudly. I stepped back and quickly scooped it off the floor. The screen brightly displayed the name Ben. I knew a literal legal hurricane was about to sweep through this house. I didn't answer it. Keeping my eyes locked on them, I slowly backed toward the hallway. "Finish your Christmas dinner," I said, my voice soft but bone-chilling. "Because this might be the last peaceful meal your family ever eats in this house." With that, I turned and sprinted toward the master bedroom at the end of the hall. Liam's heavy footsteps pounded behind me. He was screaming obscene curses. But I was faster. I lunged into the room, slammed the solid oak door shut, twisted the lock with a loud click, and slid the heavy deadbolt into place. Bang! 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 Liam violently hammered the door. The thick wood rattled under his fists. "Open the door, you bitch! Who are you calling? Get out here and talk. Are you trying to destroy this family?" Liam roared outside. Then came Eleanor's hurried footsteps. Her shrill voice seeped through the crack under the door. "Mia, what are you doing? Whatever it is, we handle it behind closed doors as a family. Open the door, don't make a scene, you'll make us the laughingstock of the neighborhood." Behind closed doors. Hilarious. When they slapped me, they didn't think about handling it behind closed doors. When they forged my signature to send me to prison, they didn't care about family ties. Now, as the noose began to tighten, they suddenly remembered their morals. I leaned against the door, ignoring the deafening pounding outside. My chest heaved. I swiped the screen and answered the call. "Mia, it's Ben. I'm in the car. Law enforcement is pulling up to your subdivision. Listen to me closely, Mia. Do not panic. Is the door locked? It's locked. They're trying to break it down. Let them try. The more they pound, the better. That noise is evidence of terroristic threats and disturbance. Now listen to my instructions. First, absolutely do not wash your face. Do not change your clothes. Every drop of blood, every tear, every stain on you right now is critical physical evidence for felony assault and domestic violence. Do you understand? I understand. I'm wearing exactly what I had on. The hot soup burned my arms. Good. Put your phone on selfie mode. Take photos of your face from every angle to show the swelling and the blood on your mouth. Take close-ups of the scratches and burns on your arms and clothes. Turn on the voice recorder and set it near the door gap to capture all the threats your husband and his mother are screaming outside. The louder they scream, the heavier the charges. Okay, it's recording. Liam is threatening to break the door. That's a solid core door, he can't break it barehanded. If he uses a tool, back away, find a heavy object to defend yourself, but absolutely do not initiate an attack. Second, Mia, that $1 million shadow equity loan you texted me about last week, do you have all the documents secured? I have everything. I backed up the forged guarantee contracts, the illicit wire transfers from Liam's company, and the audio recordings of Eleanor negotiating with the loan sharks. I hid 3 USB drives in 3 different places. Excellent. Get the USBs and keep them on your person. When the local police and white-collar detectives come in, hand them directly to me. Mia, you need to understand the gravity of this. Your husband slapping you is domestic battery. But drugging you to forge a signature for $1 million shadow loan, attempting to defraud a financial institution and using you as a scapegoat, that is major federal wire fraud and identity theft. The sentencing guidelines are severe. They tried to send you to the slaughterhouse. You cannot go soft on them. I won't, Ben. Just now. He hit me to the floor. My mother-in-law laughed. She said their money could buy justice. Buy justice? Let's see if their money can buy off a federal indictment. Arrogant nouveau riche idiots always think money is omnipotent until they feel the cold steel of handcuffs. Take a deep breath, Mia. I know you're in pain. But right now you must be a CFO. You are not a battered wife crying in a room. You are the person holding the legal execution warrant for that entire family. Gather your personal IDs, passport, and put them in a small bag. I have them. But Ben, if we blow this up, will Mom and Dad upstate be in danger? These people deal with loan sharks. I'm terrified they'll retaliate against our parents. Do you think I've been a federal judge all these years just to sit on my hands? At noon today, I quietly had U.S. Marshals relocate Mom and Dad to a secure federal safe house. They can't touch a single hair on anyone in our family. From this second on, cut off all communication. No negotiating, no accepting apologies. Do not open that door until you hear. I know. Thank you, Ben. I'm so sorry I hid this from you for years, trying to endure it alone. Don't apologize. The blame belongs to the abuser, not the victim. I'm turning into your gated community now. The police are already staging at your gate. Keep the phone screen on. From this moment forward, you are the hunter, not the prey. The call ended, but Ben's sharp, rational words pumped a new wave of life into my chest. The initial fear and trembling completely vanished. In the quiet bedroom, a stark contrast to the thumping and vulgar cursing outside my door, I sprang into action. I knew the rules of the game. To topple people who use money to bend reality, I needed bulletproof, ironclad evidence in my hands. I dragged myself to the large vanity mirror. Looking at my reflection, I barely recognized the everyday Mia. My usually neat hair was a rat's nest, matted with sweat and soup. My left cheek was horribly swollen, bearing the angry red imprint of a hand. My lip was split open, the blood clotting into dark streaks. My expensive silk blouse was ruined with grease and orange bisque stains. I picked up my phone and coldly opened the camera. Click. 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 I took extreme close-ups of every injury. Straight on, profile, side angles. I pulled up my sleeves and photographed the bleeding scratches from the broken porcelain. I took wide shots of the room I had barricaded myself in. Tomorrow, these photos would sit on a prosecutor's desk, the most undeniable proof of felony domestic violence. Outside, the pounding on the door began to slow. Perhaps Liam's hands hurt, or he thought I was just throwing a tantrum and locking myself in to cry like a weak woman. I heard Eleanor coaxing him. Leave her, Liam. Let her starve in there for the night and see if she crawls out tomorrow begging for forgiveness. Insolent women need a few slaps to learn their place. She got off easy. Go wash your hands and finish your dinner. Don't let her ruin our Christmas. Liam's heavy footsteps stomped away. He actually left. They went back to the dining table, continuing to enjoy the lavish feast bought with my credit card. Their cold-blooded apathy reached a level that made me shudder. They beat me up, then casually went back to drinking wine as if nothing happened. In their minds, I was a disobedient pet that needed disciplining, not a human being with human rights. I smirked. Good. Keep eating. Their arrogance was the massive loophole I needed to finalize the net. I slid my phone, still recording, right up to the gap under the door to capture the muffled conversations from the dining room. Then I quickly went to the safe hidden behind a painting. Liam didn't know the code. It was my personal safe from before we got married. I pulled out a waterproof Ziploc bag containing my social security card, passport, marriage certificate, and most importantly, the deed to the small condo I owned before marriage, the only asset my in-laws hadn't touched. I opened my makeup compact and dug out a micro USB drive hidden under the pressed powder. The second USB was in the lining of my purse. Both held the audio files, screenshots, and the forged loan guarantee I had spent a month compiling. I shoved it all into my crossbody bag, strapping it tightly across my chest. But that wasn't enough. As a finance professional, I knew investigators needed live, dynamic proof of money movement for a wire fraud indictment. I opened my personal laptop and logged into the corporate banking portal, using my CFO credentials. Under the pale blue glow of the screen, I exported the transaction history of the Vance family's 3 corporate accounts for the last 6 months. The numbers didn't lie: phantom transfers, massive loans dispersed by banks, and instantly wired into personal accounts to fund their lifestyle instead of buying construction materials. Wire transfers of hundreds of thousands of dollars to accounts under the name of Dominic Russo, a known figure in the shadow banking underworld. It was all clear as day. I saved the PDFs, added a 2-factor encryption lock, and emailed them directly to Ben's secure server. Done. I shut the laptop and shoved it in my backpack. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the lavish bedroom. A massive blown-up wedding photo on the wall showed Liam's radiant smile and my shy, happy face. 4 years of my prime, 4 years of forcing myself into a gilded cage, trying to use kindness to buy a family's love. And my reward was drowning in debt, seeing stars from slaps, and being despised to my very marrow. I gently touched my swollen cheek. The burning pain shot to my brain, but it made me incredibly lucid. No more tears. No more self-pity. The weak prey died the moment the scalding soup hit my skin. Right now, sitting in the dark room, I felt the posture of a patient hunter waiting for the prey to step into the trap. Suddenly, heavy, muffled noises came from outside the window. Although the soundproof glass was thick, I could hear the rumbling engines of multiple large vehicles pulling into the estate. No blaring movie sirens, just the rapid, decisive, disciplined movement of law enforcement vehicles. Beams from headlights swept across the curtains, casting long shadows on the walls. Out in the dining room, Olivia's loud giggles and the clinking of Liam's wine glass abruptly stopped. They must have heard the doorbell ringing incessantly. Who on earth is visiting at this hour? Liam, go see who's leaning on the doorbell, Eleanor's voice echoed, annoyed at being interrupted. I heard the shuffling of Liam's loafers as he walked to the front door. The heavy deadbolt clicked open, and the voice that followed wasn't a standard holiday greeting. A commanding, icy, and authoritative voice shattered the arrogant illusion of that rotten aristocratic family. Nassau County Police and Federal Bureau of Investigation. Everyone in the house, keep your hands visible and stay where you are. I slowly stood up, adjusting the strap of my bag. I walked to the bedroom door, my hand gripping the cold metal knob. The game was over. It was time for me to open this door, step into the light, and send them straight to hell. The lock clicked sharply in the deathly silent house. I turned the knob, pushed the heavy oak door open, and stepped out into the hallway. The first thing I saw wasn't the aggressive, violent Liam from 30 minutes ago, but a scene frozen like a still-life painting. Liam was rooted to the spot in the grand foyer, his hand still on the doorknob, shaking violently. Less than 6 feet from him stood 3 uniformed police officers, their faces stern, their sharp eyes scanning the room. Behind them were heavily armed tactical officers, and several plainclothes detectives were rapidly fanning out to secure all exits to the mansion. At the dining table, Eleanor and Olivia sat like stone statues. The bite of meat Olivia was chewing seemed lodged in her throat. Her eyes were bugged out in sheer terror. Eleanor was gripping the edge of the mahogany table so tightly her knuckles were stark white. Her meticulously made-up face was completely drained of blood. The arrogance, the condescending posture of the high society matriarch was entirely erased, replaced by the abject terror of someone dealing in shady business, having the spotlight of justice suddenly blasted into their face. Who called in the report? A detective barked, his voice booming through the cavernous foyer. Liam jumped. The instinct of a man used to buying his way out of trouble kicked in. He forced a stiff, pathetic smile, the most wretched smile I had ever seen. He rubbed his hands together, stuttering as he tried to act, buddy, officers. Hey, there's a misunderstanding. It's Christmas, we're just having a family dinner. My wife and I just had a little loud argument, that's all. No murder or burglary here to warrant all this. The neighbors must have heard wrong. Let me call Chief Davis at the precinct, we're good friends. He reached toward his pocket to pull out his phone, trying to flex his "I'm rich" and connected muscles. But before he could finish, I stepped out of the shadows of the hallway into the bright light of the living room. Nobody heard wrong. I made the call. My voice wasn't loud, but it cleanly sliced through Liam's pathetic cover-up. Every eye in the room snapped to me. In that split second, I saw Liam's pupils contract like he'd been electrocuted. Eleanor's mouth fell open, a choked gasp escaping her throat. The sight of me at that moment was a physical slap to the retinas of everyone present. I stood under their $100,000 crystal chandelier, looking absolutely battered, yet radiating the coldest, most unyielding aura. My hair was a mess. My swollen cheek and the bright red streak of blood contrasted violently with my pale skin. My silk blouse was stained with grease and soup. The bleeding scratches on my arms were glaringly obvious. The moment the officers saw me, their expressions hardened instantly. The evidence of felony assault was indisputable. No further explanation was needed. "Are you Mia Hayes Vance?" The caller reporting domestic battery and providing intel on a major wire fraud operation? The lead detective asked. Stepping toward me to confirm. "Yes, I am." I nodded, walking steadily toward them. As I passed Liam, who was frozen in place, I pointed my finger directly at his face. My voice rang out, enunciating every syllable. "This man, Liam Vance, my husband, viciously battered me and caused these injuries. But that isn't all. I am officially reporting Liam Vance and Eleanor Vance, my mother-in-law, for drugging me, forging my signature, and stealing my biometric thumbprint while I was incapacitated. To guarantee a $1 million loan with an unlicensed shadow equity firm for the purpose of defrauding financial institutions and framing me as the scapegoat." You lying bitch, you're insane." Eleanor suddenly snapped like a cornered rat. She shrieked, lunging up from her chair toward me. "Officers, don't listen to her. She's mentally unstable. She took out the loans herself and is trying to pin it on us. Arrest her, it's slander." Liam snapped out of his trance. He lunged to grab my arm, gritting his teeth. "Shut your mouth. Do you have a death wish, Mia? Back up. Do not move." Two tactical officers immediately stepped in, physically blocking Liam and Eleanor. The sheer, authoritative shout of law enforcement made both of them freeze and shrink back in terror. I stood safely behind the wall of police officers, looking at the two faces that, just 30 minutes ago, were laughing at me and challenging me with, "We have money, let's see who dares touch us." Now, facing the blue wall of the law, the money they were so proud of was as worthless as toilet paper. They couldn't bribe them. They couldn't make a phone call to pull strings. Because this wasn't a standard noise complaint. This was a coordinated federal and state sting operation. "You say I'm slandering you?" I looked at Eleanor, giving a cold, half smile. "The forged loan documents with my thumbprint are sitting in your safe in the second-floor office. The wire transfers from the corporate account to the loan sharks were executed by you and Liam at 2:00 p.m. on the 15th of last month. I have all the bank statements." Slander or not? Let the detective seal this house and crack open your safe to find out. My words were a fatal stab straight into their jugular. Eleanor's legs gave out. She collapsed heavily onto the sofa, clutching her head, unable to utter a single sound. Liam was hyperventilating, sweat pouring down his forehead. He stumbled backward, his eyes darting frantically, looking for an escape that didn't exist. They thought I was a naive sheep who only knew how to serve dinner and swipe my Amex. They forgot that before I married into the Vance family, I was a CFO, someone who breathed numbers, contracts, and financial loopholes. Once a finance professional decides to hunt down a money trail, every single dirty cent they move leaves an indelible scar. Secure the scene. EMTs are outside. Get the victim in an ambulance for a forensic evaluation immediately, the lead detective ordered. I took a deep breath. The air in the house was no longer suffocating. It reeked of judgment. This Christmas night, the dawn of justice had truly broken over the ruins of the Vance family's so-called aristocracy. Chaos erupted in the luxurious mansion. The The flashing red and blue lights of the cruisers outside blasted through the large windows, blinding and relentless. Plainclothes agents branched out in all directions, securing rooms, especially the second-floor office containing the safe holding the Vance family's dirty secrets. My sister-in-law, Olivia, who had been mute with shock, finally started trembling. She pulled out her phone to call someone, but a detective quickly barked at her to put the phone down, forbidding any outside contact until the scene was processed. Olivia flinched so hard she dropped her expensive folding phone onto the hardwood floor. All the color drained from her face. Liam still refused to accept reality. The ego of a patriarchal man used to crushing people with wealth made him thrash in despair. He turned to the lead detective. His voice a mix of begging and threatening. "How are you running this operation? Do you have a search warrant to tear through my house? Do you know who my father was? Do you know how much this company pays in state and federal taxes every year? You listen to a psychotic woman slander and dare raid my house? I will sue your entire department." "Who are you going to sue?" A deep, resonant voice, bearing the weight of 1,000 pounds, suddenly echoed from the front door. Everyone turned their heads. From the darkness of the winter night, a tall man in a dark wool trench coat stepped in. His face was stern, his eyes behind his wire-rimmed glasses flashing with a cold, sword-like glare. Every step he took on the marble floor resonated with unshakable authority. Ben. My brother. The moment I saw him, the last bit of resilient armor I was forcing myself to hold up completely shattered. My nose burned, but I bit my lip hard to keep from sobbing. Ben's eyes swept across the living room, taking in the ruined dinner, Liam hyperventilating, and finally stopping on my swollen, bruised face and blood-stained blouse. In that moment, I saw his jaw clench. A raging inferno of a protective older brother flared in his eyes. But with the discipline of a veteran jurist, he suppressed the rage, transforming it into a lethal, icy calm. He walked up to me, took off his heavy trench coat, and gently draped it over my trembling shoulders, covering my stains and scratched arms. His hand patted my shoulder, a single tap that transmitted absolute safety. "It's over. I'm here." Then he turned to face Liam. Liam looked at Ben, his brow furrowed. He had met Ben a few times at the wedding and holidays. In the eyes of the Vance family, Ben was just a poor government worker scraping by on a government salary, driving a normal car, dressing simply. Eleanor had once sneered behind his back. "What's so great about working for the government?" Without taking bribes, he couldn't afford to buy the guest toilet in our house in a lifetime. Because of that shallow mindset, Liam still kept his chin up, his tone arrogant and dismissive. "Oh, look who it is. My brother-in-law. Perfect timing. Look at the mess your sister made of my house." She called the cops to arrest her husband and mother-in-law. "You work for the government. You know the law. Tell her to drop the charges and apologize. Out of respect for you, I'll let it slide. Otherwise, tomorrow, I'll throw her out on the street without a dime to her name." Ben didn't get angry. He pushed his glasses up his nose, the corner of his lips curling into a smile of absolute pity. He didn't even answer Liam. He turned to the lead detective standing next to him and gave a slight nod. "Good evening, detective. What's the status of the scene?" The detective, who had been relentlessly tough just moments before, instantly stood at attention, his demeanor incredibly respectful as he reported clearly. "Reporting to your honor, the scene is fully secured. We are currently executing the federal search warrant obtained by the U.S. Attorney's Office regarding the financial fraud tip. The crime scene unit and EMTs are ready to transport the victim for forensic evaluation. Your honor?" Liam stumbled backward, his voice cracking into pieces. His eyes bulged in shock as he looked from the detective, to Ben, and then to me. Eleanor, sitting on the floor by the sofa, jerked as if she'd been struck by lightning when she heard the title. "Your honor." Olivia gasped, covering her face with both hands. They couldn't believe their ears. The poor government worker they had always looked down upon, the man they thought was just pushing papers in some municipal building, was actually a chief judge of the federal district court, one of the most powerful wielders of the scales of justice in the state. Ben finally stepped forward, standing exactly 1 pace away from Liam. The overwhelming aura of a federal judge radiated from him, making Liam involuntarily shake. His knees looked ready to buckle. "You said you have money. You said you can buy justice," Ben's voice echoed, low but sharp enough to cut stone. "You said you'd throw cash in the face of the law so no one would dare touch a hair on your head. Let's see tomorrow, when your corporate accounts are frozen, your assets are seized by the feds, and you are standing in a federal courtroom facing 15 to 20 years for wire fraud, identity theft, and felony assault. Let's see if your dirty money can buy your freedom." Liam gasped for air, his face as white as a sheet of paper. His arrogance, that aristocratic facade, shattered into a million pieces, crumbling at his feet. He turned to look at me. The aggressive, threatening glare was replaced by frantic, panicked begging. Standing safely next to Ben, I reached into my bag, pulled out the USB drive containing the entire corporate ledger and the forged guarantee evidence, and handed it directly to the lead detective. "I am pressing all charges. No mediation. No dropping the case," I stated clearly, every word echoing in the living room. The aristocratic ego was completely annihilated. The people who used money to sit on the heads of others would, tonight, learn how to drop to their knees before the law. When the cold, heavy steel of the handcuffs was pulled from the detective's belt, the sharp clack-clack echoed in the silence, crushing the very last ounce of Vance family pride. Liam was so terrified, his legs turned to jelly. He stumbled backward, crashing into an expensive porcelain vase and sending it wobbling. Seeing her son about to be cuffed and hauled away, Eleanor, the mother-in-law who constantly bragged, "I am the queen of this house," suddenly let out a pathetic wail. She threw herself off the sofa, abandoning all dignity, crawling on the floor to grab my calves. Her tears and snot ran down her heavily powdered face, creating a grotesque, clownish mask. "Mia! Oh my God, Mia. I'm begging you, please don't do this. If you do this, you'll kill your husband, you'll destroy this family. Spouses fight, a few hits are normal, even plates clash in the sink. How can you have the heart to call the cops and send your husband to federal prison? Do you have no humanity? If you won't think of yourself, think of the Vance family's reputation." I coldly stepped back, yanking my pant leg out of her death grip. "The Vance family's reputation? You dare talk about reputation? When he slapped me face first into a puddle of scalding soup, and you sat there eating steak and laughing at me, where was that reputation? When you told him to steal my thumbprint while I was unconscious with a fever to sign $1 million loan from the mob, did you think about humanity? I didn't know about that. Liam did that himself. I'm an old woman, what do I know about loan documents? You have to understand, I'm a victim too. Circumstances forced his hand. The company was struggling, so Liam took a desperate risk. He only did it to save this empire for your future." I laughed out loud, a laugh of absolute bitterness and extreme disgust. She threw her own son under the bus the second she saw handcuffs. "You truly are an incredible mother, but did you forget I am a chief financial officer? The audio recording of you calling Dominic Russo to negotiate the kickback percentage for dragging me in as the guarantor, I recorded it perfectly, word for word. That USB is in the detective's hands right now. How are you going to deny that?" Eleanor turned pale but still desperately tried to play the moral high ground. "My God in heaven, what a wicked daughter-in-law. I must have been blind to bring a venomous snake like you into this house. You think sending your husband and mother-in-law to prison will make you happy? When you walk out of here, society will spit on you as a traitorous woman who ruined her husband and family. A wife is supposed to sacrifice. If a husband makes a mistake, you close the doors and fix it. Making a scene like this, how will your parents upstate ever show their faces in public again? You're ruining your own family's name." I crouched down, staring straight into her wide, terrified eyes, grinding out every word. "My parents are clean, honest people. They would rather see their daughter divorced, they would rather support me for the rest of my life, than ever teach their child to be a doormat for vile scammers. You call me a snake? You call me a traitor? So when you and he blew hundreds of thousands of my hard-earned dollars on Mercedes SUVs, designer bags, and European vacations while I was grinding my teeth paying off the bank interest, what do you call that? Family values? Eleanor trembled, her voice weakening, shifting into a pathetic plea. I'll sell my bags, my diamonds, I'll give it all back. Please beg Ben. He's a federal judge. If he says the word, the police will leave. Tell him to show mercy. We are family after all. I'm begging you, Mia. I stood up, looking at her with the most emotionless gaze I had ever mustered in my 30 years of life. You are mistaken. The moment you challenged me to scream because you had money, we stopped being family. Your money cannot buy my forgiveness, and Ben will never abuse his power to cover up a felony. Save your tears to present to the jury at your federal trial. Now, stand up and put your hands out. The officers are waiting for you. The magnificent living room, over 1,000 square feet, which just an hour ago reeked of expensive wine, cigars, and arrogant laughter, had become a freezing crime scene. Plainclothes agents worked with rapid, precise efficiency. The rustling of papers and the clicking of laptops sounded like a countdown to execution for the Vance family. The financial crimes detective plugged my USB into his laptop. The blue light from the screen illuminated their hyper-tense faces. They were still clinging to a sliver of hope that perhaps the daughter-in-law was just bluffing, that the data I pulled was just surface level and insufficient for an indictment. They forgot one thing: I wasn't just a low-level clerk doing data entry. I was a CFO who had survived a decade in corporate finance. When I decided to hunt down a money trail, even a misallocated dime would be traced down to its roots. I stood with my arms crossed, my voice ringing out clearly in the silence, reading a direct indictment to their faces. Officers, please open the folder named Internal Credit Report. It contains the actual financial statements of Vance Development Corp., the glamorous shell company that my husband, Liam, plays CEO for. Everyone on the outside sees the Vances driving Mercedes S-classes, living in a multi-million-dollar mansion, shopping without looking at price tags, and assumes they are billionaires. The truth is, that company has been clinically dead for 2 years. I walked slowly past the sofas, sliding my icy gaze over Olivia's bloodless face. Olivia, you pride yourself on being a rich heiress, bragging about gifting your in-laws $100,000 every year, right? You post your European vacations and limited edition Birkins on Instagram. Do you know where the money you swipe every day actually comes from? Olivia trembled, her red-painted lips chattering together, unable to form a word. It comes from loan sharks, I ground out, throwing the brutal truth in her face. The Vance family doesn't have a single active real estate project. The land they use to boast and raise capital is heavily mortgaged to 3 different banks and is in default, on the brink of foreclosure. To maintain the facade of wealth to scam other investors and to scam me, they turn to the shadow market. They run a Ponzi scheme, borrowing from one end to pay the other, using new money to pay old interest. This very mansion we're standing in has essentially been signed away to private equity thugs on a handshake. Eleanor slumped to the floor, clutching her chest, gasping like she was having an asthma attack. The ruthless exposure left her no room for excuses. I turned back to the detectives, pointing at the screen. Look at the PDF transaction logs. Those are the bank statements I exported. My $200,000 life savings, plus the $300,000 line of credit I co-signed. The minute it hit the corporate account, it was never used for construction materials or payroll. It was immediately diverted. One portion to Eleanor's personal account for jewelry. One portion to Olivia for her vacation. The rest was wired directly to accounts under Dominic Russo, a man with a rap sheet for extortion and usury. But that's not the worst part. I lowered my voice, absolute disgust rising in my eyes as I stared directly at Liam. When they realized I had maxed out my borrowing capacity at legitimate banks, they decided to drain my last drop of blood. They fabricated loan documents. They waited until I was bedridden with a fever, drugged me with sleeping pills, and stole my biometric thumbprint. They forged my signature to guarantee a $1 million loan from the mob. I stepped right up to Liam. He stumbled backward, his back slamming into the wall. You calculated perfectly, didn't you, Liam? You thought with my signature and thumbprint that $1 million debt would legally bind me. You planned to declare corporate bankruptcy, file for divorce, and liquidate whatever personal assets you had left. Meanwhile, I, Mia, would be hunted down by thugs, dragged to federal court for fraud, and become the perfect scapegoat for your rotten aristocratic family. Isn't that right? Silence blanketed the room. The grandfather clock ticked heavily. It was a plot so malicious, so cold-blooded, drawn up by people wearing the mask of family. The lead detective closed his notepad, his sharp eyes locking onto Liam. No more words were needed. The chain of evidence was so logical, clear, and complete that no defense attorney in the country could bend this truth. We have money, the law can't touch us. I repeated the exact words Liam had screamed at dinner. My tone was dripping with peak sarcasm. Now I understand. The money you brag about is just garbage built on blood, sweat, and fraud. Not only do you not have money, you are the most despicable deadbeats in society. The final aristocratic mask was ripped off, mercilessly exposing a rotting core reeking of greed and sociopathy. When people are pushed to the brink, stripped of all their camouflage, their true nature is laid bare in the most grotesque way. And the true nature of Liam, the man I called my husband, the man I shared a bed with, the man I entrusted my prime years to, was something that made me want to vomit more than anything else in the world. The chandelier light washed over his pale face, dripping in sweat. He could no longer maintain the dignified aura of a CEO. He was no longer the man pointing in my face screaming I have money. Now, facing the cold steel cuffs and ironclad evidence, he collapsed entirely. And in that moment of absolute panic, Liam did something that even the lowest scum would hesitate to do. He betrayed his own flesh and blood to save himself. Liam suddenly lunged toward the detective, waving his hands frantically in the air, his voice cracking into a shrill, terrified pitch. Officers! You have to listen to me, I'm innocent. I didn't plan to defraud Mia. It was all my mother. Yes, it was her. His words hit the living room like a sledgehammer. Eleanor, who was sobbing hysterically on the floor, went dead silent. She snapped her head up, her eyes wide as saucers, staring at the precious golden boy she had pampered and protected with her life. Liam. What? What are you saying? Eleanor's voice trembled, refusing to believe her ears. Liam didn't even glance at his mother. He pointed a shaking finger straight at the woman sitting on the floor, screaming like a lunatic. It was her. She masterminded it. She told me Mia was a CFO with a high salary and great credit, and told me to use any means necessary to drain her money for the company. She was the one who contacted the loan sharks. She gave me the sleeping pills and told me to put them in Mia's juice to get her thumbprint. I didn't know anything. I'm just a CEO on paper. She controls all the finances. Arrest her, don't arrest me. Hearing this, Eleanor's chest heaved violently. She gasped for air, clutching her left breast, her face twisting in agony and sheer disbelief. The son she had paved the way for, the son she had used the most despicable tactics to steal money for, was now ready to stomp her into the mud to save his own skin. God Almighty, you wretched boy! You dare blame your own mother? Eleanor hissed, her voice weak and choked with bitterness. But Liam's cowardice didn't stop there. Seeing the detectives remain completely unfazed, he whipped around to point at his sister. Olivia too. He pointed at his sister, cowering on the chair. That $200,000 Mia transferred? Olivia begged Mom for $150,000 of it to go shopping, go to Europe, buy Birkin bags. She's an accessory to wire fraud. Arrest her too. Don't just look at me, Olivia shrieked, lunging forward to pound her fists on her brother's back. You bastard, are you crazy? Mom gave me that money. How was I supposed to know it was Mia's? Don't you drag me down like a rabid dog. I'm calling my lawyer. I have nothing to do with you people. The scene unfolding before me was no different from a pack of sewer rats tearing each other apart as floodwaters filled their nest. Mother condemning son, sister beating brother, son framing mother. The veneer of a proper, loving family was stripped clean, revealing the darkest, most selfish, and filthiest patches of human nature. I stood with my arms crossed, my face expressionless, but deep down, a profound disgust rose to the back of my throat. Disgust for the man I had once poured my heart into loving. Women can be blind. We can forgive poverty, we can tolerate minor flaws. But there is one thing that, once seen clearly, turns all love to ash: cowardice. A man who dares to violently slap his wife to assert fake dominance, yet readily sells out his own mother and sister to dodge a prison sentence. He isn't a man. He is a pathetic parasite wearing human skin. After failing to throw his mother and sister to the wolves, Liam seemed to realize that Ben and I were the ones holding the executioner's axe. He suddenly turned and rushed toward me. Both of his knees slammed onto the freezing marble floor. He knelt directly in front of me, the person he had mercilessly trampled on just 30 minutes ago. "Mia! Mia!" I was wrong. Liam cried, actually slapping his own face. The slaps sounded loud but had no real force behind them. "A demon possessed me, Mia. The debt pressure broke my mind, that's why I hit you. Look at me, Mia. We used to be in love. Do you remember our 1-year anniversary? I knelt in the rain to propose to you. Please, talk to Ben. Please withdraw the charges. I know I'm a bastard, I'm an animal. But look at my eyes. Please, Mia. I promise I'll get a normal job and work like a dog to pay you back. I'll kneel and wash your feet every single day. Don't let me go to federal prison. I'll die in there, Mia." He tried to reach out and grab my legs, but I took a sharp step back, decisively and coldly letting his filthy hands grasp empty air. I looked down into the bloodshot, tear-soaked eyes of this pathetic man. My lips curled into a faint smirk. Love? Anniversaries? I spoke lightly, but every word was a razor blade slicing through his final hopes. Liam, that love you're talking about died the exact moment you handed me a glass of orange juice laced with sedatives. When you used my thumbprint to sell my life to the mob, did you think about our anniversaries? You kneeling here now, you aren't crying because you're sorry. You're crying because you're terrified of prison. You're terrified of losing your luxury facade. I stood up straight, turning my face away, unwilling to let the sight of this man dirty my vision any longer. Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life, but sending you to federal prison will be the single most correct thing I ever do. The last drop of pity inside me was gone. In this moment, there was only the hammer of justice. The process moved swiftly and coldly, following strict legal protocol. With the evidence so blatant and the severity of the crime's massive wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy laid bare, no leniency was offered. The lead detective, holding the file, stepped into the center of the room, his expression like iron. His voice boomed, shattering the wailing of the Vance family. Based on the evidence collected, you are all under investigation. Eleanor Vance and Olivia Vance, your passports are seized and you are restricted from leaving the state pending federal indictment. Liam Vance, you are under arrest. The cold steel handcuffs clicked tightly around Liam's wrists. He stopped screaming. His body went limp, his eyes completely glassy and lifeless, like a man whose soul had been sucked out, as 2 officers pulled him to his feet. Furthermore, the detective continued, reading off the warrant like sledgehammers crushing their proud empire. Based on preliminary evidence of asset dissipation and massive financial fraud, the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI have frozen all corporate accounts of Vance Development Corp., as well as all personal accounts under the names Liam Vance, Eleanor Vance, and Olivia Vance. Eleanor cringed when she heard the word frozen. The black Amex card she loved to flash at the spa and boutiques was now just a useless piece of plastic. They had lost everything. Not a penny to their names. But the final blow was the most bitter. According to expedited asset tracking, this estate, along with 2 luxury vehicles registered to the company, are collateral in severe default and show evidence of illegal secondary mortgages. We are placing asset forfeiture seals on all valuables in this residence, pending seizure and victim restitution. Instantly, agents began their work. Bright red federal seizure tape was slapped across the safe upstairs. They taped up the massive curved TV, the imported surround sound system, and the temperature-controlled wine fridges Eleanor had just stocked using my credit card. They went out to the garage and slapped a massive sticker diagonally across the door of the Mercedes G-Wagon. Liam used to flex on the world. Even Olivia's collection of Hermes and Chanel bags was logged and seized to investigate whether they were bought with illicit funds. The money Liam screamed about at dinner, the power he thought was untouchable, was stripped down to the bone in less than an hour. The red seizure tape strung across the house looked like talismans permanently sealing away the arrogant, nouveau-riche delusion of these frauds. I stood with my arms crossed, quietly witnessing this total collapse. Eleanor sat huddled in the corner, her expensive blowout ruined, hair hiding half her face. She stared at the red tape being plastered all over her belongings, her lips trembling as she muttered, "It's all gone. It's all gone. We've lost everything." Yes, lost everything. Those who use dirty money to trample on others will eventually face absolute ruin in the most humiliating way. They thought they were predators, using a fake aristocratic mask to trap honest people. They thought kind people were easy to bully, that understanding people were easy to exploit. But they didn't realize that when pushed into a corner, a victim's retaliation carries the most devastating power of all. Ben walked up to me, handing me my coat that he had retrieved from the bedroom. "The feds will take it from here. Go with the EMTs to the hospital to get the forensic exam done, then come back to my place to rest. First thing tomorrow, my network of attorneys will handle the divorce filings and the civil suits to recover your assets." I nodded and took the coat. I looked at my brother, a gentle, peaceful smile appearing on my lips for the first time in months. "I'm fine, Ben. Truly, I am." I adjusted my bag on my shoulder, and took long, steady steps toward the front door. I didn't bother turning back to look at that family even once. Because in my eyes, they were legally and morally dead. I walked right past Liam, who was firmly held by 2 officers. The metallic smell of blood still lingered on my lip, but it was no longer the smell of endurance, it was the smell of liberation. That slap at the Christmas dinner table didn't break me. It shattered the final shell of my patience, releasing the real Mia. An independent, proud woman who would never let anyone trample her dignity. The freezing winter wind hit my face as I walked out of the massive iron gates of the estate. But strangely, I didn't feel cold. I held my head high, taking a deep breath of the crisp Christmas night air. My life, from this second on, officially restarted clean, free, and proud. Inside the mansion, the scene resembled a tragic theater stage after the velvet curtains had dropped. The grand, European-style chandeliers still blazed, but they could no longer hide the utter ruin of the people standing beneath them. Law enforcement was finalizing the paperwork to transport the prisoner. Liam, his wrists locked in cold steel, suddenly surged forward with the last pathetic ounce of his strength. He didn't run toward the door, he lunged toward me, dropping heavily to his knees on the freezing granite porch. The sound of his knees hitting the stone echoed with a heavy thud, but he didn't even seem to feel the pain. The arrogance of the fake CEO, the ego of the man who just pointed at my face yelling "I have money," was entirely stripped away, not leaving a single crumb. His face was ash gray, sweat drenching his forehead, his bloodshot eyes overflowing with tears. He looked up at me with a pleading gaze so pathetic and vile it made my stomach churn. The 2 officers beside him moved to haul him up, but I gently raised a hand, asking them to pause for a second. I wanted to see what kind of play this man could possibly act out at rock bottom. "Mia. Mia. I'm begging you. Please, have mercy on me. Have mercy on the 4 years of our marriage. Tell the FBI this is just a misunderstanding. Drop the charges, Mia. I know I was wrong. I'm a bastard, I'm an animal. But look at me, Mia. Look into my eyes. Do you remember the past? The day I knelt in the rain, holding roses to propose to you in front of everyone? I promised to protect you for the rest of my life. I still love you, Mia. I only did these horrible things because of the pressure at the company, because I wanted to save this empire for our future. Please, let me off just this once. If I go to federal prison, I won't survive. My career, my reputation, it's all destroyed. Mia. Reputation? Career? Are you talking about the reputation built by defrauding your wife's life savings, or the career run on fake invoices and mafia loans? You say you love me, you say you did everything for our future. Then answer me this. That night, when I was running a 102-degree fever, passing out in bed, who personally stirred sleeping pills into my orange juice and forced me to drink it? Who coldly took his unconscious wife's thumb, pressed it into an ink pad, and stamped it on a $1 million loan guarantee with mobsters? Is that how you protect me for the rest of my life? Mia. I was forced. My mother manipulated me, the loan sharks were squeezing me so hard I lost my mind. I swear to you, the second I got liquidity, I was going to pay off that debt. I was going to shred the file. I would never have let you take the legal fall for it. You have to believe me. You know me better than anyone, I'm not naturally an evil person. I was just foolish, I just took one wrong step. My wife, please soften your heart. Save me this one time. I'll spend the rest of my life working like a dog to repay you. I'll sign over every remaining share to you. I'll cut off all these toxic people. Just nod your head and let me go. Shut up. Do not use the word wife to refer to me. It sounds disgusting coming from you. You blame your mother for manipulating you, you blame the mob for squeezing you. How old are you, Liam? You are a grown man who understands the law, yet you chose the most cowardly path possible. Selling someone else's life to save your own. You say you were going to get liquidity to pay it off? So the cases of imported wine, the designer bags you bought Olivia, the new G-Wagon you upgraded to last month, was that the money you were saving to clear my debt? No, Liam. You didn't take one wrong step. You executed a perfect, calculated plan to eat me alive down to the bone. You just didn't expect your prey to set a bigger trap to send you to federal prison. Mia, I know nothing I say right now will make you believe me. But look back, I gave you a life of luxury all these years. You walked out, and everyone called you a wealthy socialite, everyone envied you. The money I was wrong to take it, but are 4 years of love really worth less than a few $100,000? Do you have to push me to my death, push my mother into federal court, to be satisfied? Don't be so ruthless. If you do this, society will look at you and call you a cold-blooded, heartless bitch. A life of luxury? A wealthy socialite? Are you hallucinating? That socialite title is something I had to grind for, using my own paycheck to cover every utility bill, every floral arrangement in the foyer, every expensive Christmas gift to buy your family their fragile vanity. You call me ruthless? You slapped me 3 times in a row, split my lip, swelled my face, shoved me into boiling soup, and then pointed your finger at me laughing, I have money. Let's see who dares touch me. Where was your talk of love then? My patience wasn't a weakness for you to trample on, it was the final chance I gave you. But you tore it to shreds with your own hands. Liam was completely desperate. Tears streaming, he lunged forward trying to grab my legs, but the officers yanked him back. Mia! I'm begging you, I'm bowing to you. I'll kneel for as long as you want. Hit me, curse at me, but please don't let them take me away. I'm terrified, Mia. I don't belong in there. You're an educated woman, you're compassionate, please, save me. You're terrified? So when you forged my name, pushing an innocent woman into the crosshairs of the mafia and federal prosecutors, did it ever cross your mind that I might be terrified too? The law has no room for baseless compassion. You chose to play a game with jungle law and dirty money, now you pay the price in federal criminal court. Listen closely, Liam. I'm not exacting revenge on you. I am simply putting you exactly where a fraud and a domestic abuser belongs. Your memories, your tears, your begging right now to me, they are cheaper than the broken plates on your dining room floor. Goodbye, Liam. Have a very long sentence. Long enough to learn how to be a human being. I turned my back and walked away, not leaving so much as a backward glance for the man wailing behind me. Liam's sobbing, Eleanor's panicked gasps, Olivia's stunned silence, all those sounds faded behind me, trapped in the mansion now covered in glaring red federal seizure tape. A few days later, the real hurricane tore through the van's legacy. Within a week of that Christmas Day, the New York press and financial media aggressively covered the massive wire fraud case hiding behind a luxury real estate facade. The wealthy aristocracy was stripped bare. There was no "we have money, the law won't touch us." The federal grand jury handed down indictments, and the judge denied bail. From a CEO wearing Tom Ford cologne, Liam traded his suits for a standard-issue orange jumpsuit in the Metropolitan Detention Center, his face gaunt and hollow as he faced decades for wire fraud, identity theft, and battery. Eleanor and Olivia, though not immediately jailed, were federally indicted and restricted to the state. But the legal penalties weren't their worst punishment. The social execution by the high society they so desperately tried to impress was true hell. When news broke that their assets were frozen, creditors from commercial banks to shadow lenders swarmed the estate. The G-Wagon was towed. Olivia's limited edition bags were seized by federal marshals to trace illicit funds. The country club ladies Eleanor used to drop thousands of dollars on for lunch turned 180 degrees. When she called begging for loans to hire defense attorneys, they blocked her number. Some even took to Facebook and Instagram to mock her as a scam artist living a fake life. The most tragic was Olivia. Her husband, a man equally obsessed with status, caught the scent of his wife's family going down in flames and immediately filed for divorce. He threw Olivia out of his house to protect his own assets, ignoring her wailing at his gates. The day the federal marshals arrived to force Eleanor to vacate the mansion for foreclosure, I happened to drive by. I rolled down the window of my car. I saw Eleanor, the woman who used to sit on a throne-like sofa, eating prime rib and laughing while I was beaten now, looking 20 years older. Her back was hunched, and she was carrying 2 cheap black trash bags filled with old clothes, trudging out of the gates. She looked around fearfully, at the creditors yelling from the perimeter. No one to serve her. No one to wait on her. She had to taste what it felt like to be thrown onto the street, stripped of the dignity she used to crush others. I rolled my window up and drove away. There was no gloating, nor was there pity. To me, karma is an absolute law of physics. They planted bottomless greed, and they reaped absolute ruin. My divorce was finalized in record time. Sitting in a federal holding cell facing ironclad evidence, Liam had no leverage to drag it out. The judge granted me my legal freedom. With my attorney's intervention and the evidence I provided, the U.S. attorney cleared me of any connection to the $1 million mob loan. The forged signatures were nullified. I also filed a civil lien against the remaining legitimate shares Liam had in a minor side project to ensure restitution. Although the recovery took months, my $200,000 life savings finally found its way back to its rightful owner. On a sunny, crisp autumn morning, golden light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new condo in Manhattan. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea and stood in front of the full-length mirror. The tiny, faded scar at the corner of my mouth. The only physical remnant of that horrific Christmas night was barely visible. I touched it gently and smiled. People often say for a woman, marriage is a gamble, brains and beauty mean nothing compared to luck. I used to think that was true. But walking out of a broken marriage, stepping through the gates of hell built on manipulation and abuse, I realized a completely different truth. A woman's happiness and peace never, ever depend on the luck of picking a husband. It depends on her resilience, her financial independence, and above all, her self-respect. Patience is a virtue, but it is only valuable when given to those who cherish it. When you use patience to deal with evil, greed, and arrogance, you are not being a good wife. You are becoming an accomplice to your own abuse. Never believe empty promises like, "My money is your money." Never let anyone, even under the guise of family, strip you of your financial control and your honor. There are things that, if held onto, will break you to pieces. Letting go, no matter how painful, is the only way to stand up straight and live as a human being. I took a sip of tea, looking at the radiant, proud Mia in the mirror. I had lost her once inside the fake gilded cage of the Vance family, but now she was back stronger, sharper, and vowing never to let anyone use the label of family or the power of money to trample her ever again.